I'm with Mr. Seth Morris, who crushed it at the NHC. Second place finish and netting $250K. So, brother, tell me, what was your process going into this thing? Did you do you play a lot of tournaments? Did you think you had a shot to win it? How did you prepare and stuff?
I go into any tournament thinking I have a chance to win. I don't know if that's cocky or
That's
silly,
awesome.
but it's the way I look at it. I didn't do a lot of prep work in terms of handicapping. I feel like my best shot is sometimes just visual.
So visual meaning you look at the horses on TV and see if
I look at the horses on TV, and if I do prep work, it's generally to look at pace scenarios, right? So if I find a race where I see a ton of pace or I see something that horse might get loose, I'll kind of circle that race and make sure I go back to it. But I try not to come up with if I'm not trying to put in a pick five or something like cash handicapping, try to really keep my options open, right? And say these two or three horses might fit a certain profile. And then I go look at them on the track. Who attracts me? Does it fit? And kind of go from there.
Okay, so did you look at the entire, did you go day by day and then make a list of each horses you liked, or did you just go race by race? And I guess.
I didn't list one horse. I didn't list one horse at all.
Okay.
I shouldn't say that. The last day, when I knew I was in the top 77, I did a little more work and I circled a couple of horses, certainly in the early stuff, to try to get a handle of the optional races and make sure I didn't get caught up and pass on something that I liked. I at least wanted to look and say, hey, it's a 4. I like the favorite here. I like the favorite here. I'm going to pass. Try to isolate races where I didn't like the favorites out of those. Other than that, it was really.
So how were you able to go through that many races on the day of the tournament? You just looked at race by race and.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So maybe for better or
fast
worse.
And loose.
I was fast and loose the first day. I had $38. I had nothing. I had a couple of horses run, third, but nothing like over the top. I may have liked a couple of horses that, I think this horse might be on the lead, didn't use it. Then the horse comes from off the pace and wins. So I would have gotten lucky, but I had nothing. Went out to dinner that night with friends that are all in the 60s. And we said, look, we're having fun. And I had a great week last week business-wise, so I was really relaxed coming in. And I think that helped me on Saturday. I came in, said, I'm not going to leave anything on the table. I'm not going to leave anything hanging out. Started on the optionals right away early in the day. I didn't like favorites, and I hit 3 of the first 4. I hit a 9-1, 9-1, and a 15-1 out of the first 4 races. So I was kind of right back in it.
And that's day 2 you're talking about.
That was day 2. So
yeah.
I went from totally out of it, but not stressed about it, to, let's make a little run early in the day. It's moving day, believe in the horses you like and take a shot and get lucky. And honestly, I got really, really lucky on Saturday. A couple of the trips, every trip was perfect. And then the horses that when I had no bullets left, the favorites won. So Saturday was like a blessed day. Today, not so good, but it's horse racing and it's the NHC. And to get hot on one day was awesome, so really excited.
And going into the last couple of races, you were in the lead for a while. And we were talking briefly before about how going into the second and last race, you were in first. There was a couple of favorites. Walk me through your mindset, knowing that the guy behind you, what did you think he was going to bet? And how did you decide to take the horses you did in the last 2 races, basically?
I going into the final table, I was somewhat concerned just that I would, I think at one point, at some point it becomes a little bit about game theory and some about handicapping. So once we got to the last 2 races and I saw how close he was to me, and then I saw the next player about $21 out, said, I have a feeling this guy's going to take the 11. It was just based on the way he was playing all day.
And that was the favorite in the second last race.
It was the favorite. It was a Kenny McPeak horse.
They ended up winning.
Ended up winning at 8-5 and ended up putting him $1.50 ahead of me or something like that. But, at one point the horse was 4-5, 6-5. So the horse had to actually drift up even to get him to pass me. I didn't like the horse. I thought the horse had a perfect trip last race. Thought it was logical and very possible, but I didn't want to change my strategy just to block one person from potentially passing me with a favorite. So, I had to be right about that first of all, and I was, but then the horse would have to win, which I didn't think would happen. And, if a 9 or 10-1 shot that I like better won, who knows who's moving up from behind. So it wasn't a one-on-one competition. If it were, I might have used that 11.
Okay, so this kind of goes back into what you were telling me before, that even if you did take the favorite going into that last race, or the second to last race, and you're up by a couple bucks, right? In the last race, what would you have done? Would you have still taken, because you ended up taking the 8 that was basically 8 or 9 to 1 or 7 or 8 to 1. Would you have taken the favorite in the last race if you're in that position, or you just didn't like the favorite in the last regardless?
I think once again, based on the fact that it's not a two-person tournament, I would not have taken the favorite.
Okay.
Had I blocked him with the 11, and it was a two-person tournament and things were different, well, then maybe I'm thinking, how's he going to try to pass me? But I don't know if it would have been the 3-horse, right? Now I'm thinking he might know that I'm going to block him because I just did it the prior race. So maybe he takes the second choice or the third choice. I don't know. It was just too much thinking for me to get involved with, and too many ways for me to change my opinions on the race.
You liked the horse enough in the last race that was, roughly 10% chance or whatever it was. You just felt that if you're going last race, you would rather take the risk on that horse because you thought everyone else would pass you if that horse won. Is that fair to say?
I think that's fair to say. And I actually like that horse just as much as the favorite, if not more. It wasn't even, I didn't even think it was relative odds. I mean, if you said who's going to win, I really liked the 2, and I liked the 2 and the 8.
And the 2 was a bomb, right?
I thought the 9 was like someone that might use as a bomb. Of course, was named Time to Party, had some sprints last year. Like a logical horse that someone would plunge with in a tournament like this. The 8 had 2, fast closing second place finishes on the downhill. I was a little concerned, because sometimes those fractions that you see get a little dressed up there. The second quarter. So I wasn't sure whether he'd be able to get there. I was a little disappointed that he was that far behind the 2 who ended up finishing second. But I mean, those were the 2 horses. Turns out, had I used the 2, I would have lost. But no, I would have stayed with my strategy. A horse that looks good, that's 8-1, that fits my profile of the race. I thought the 3 would be involved in a pace duel. So I was just wrong on the race.
Yeah, no, it sounds like you're comfortable with that. I mean, that's the most important thing is the mental aspect, making sure you stand by what you want, what you believe, and postmortem too. I'm sure you'll think about this and kind of go through it. And we all make mistakes in tournaments. Not that you did, but it's you want to win by your best decision, and you'd rather lose if you're doing the right thing. In terms of what your mindset is, because you don't want to bet necessarily horses you don't like. However, like even Lawrence, who was in 4th, he ended up taking a big price to try to win the whole thing, even though the horse he thought was, 8% or whatever. And he could have maybe taken the favorite and made an extra 50K. Didn't do it. Tell me some of your thoughts on cash games versus mythical games. I know you mentioned we had met at the BCBC a long time ago, back in 2011, actually, which is kind of crazy. What are your thoughts on the differences between the two games? And do you like, how did you get here? Do you play these mythical tournaments, or what are your thoughts on cash?
I play some. I don't like them quite as much as the cash. I enjoy the cash. I mean, I love like the Monmouth Pick Your Prize is like one of my favorite tournaments. I think it's awesome. I don't mind. I like the pick and praise more than I like the lives when it comes to the these, because I think it's just silly. And if you catch a horse at the end of the day, you just blow up, right? And like, I don't want to spend my days sitting around managing live, fake tournaments. So I try to avoid those. The pick and praise enabled me to like go see my kids' games and stuff like that, live a somewhat normal life, or even just go to do something at the track where I'm focusing on the race. And, oh yeah, I put that tournament in based on put in all early speed, or I used all the outside horses at Oaklawn or Parks because there was a bias yesterday, and not really think through the races, throw $18 in and have some fun. And if you catch, try to zig when people zag. Basically, it's not I finish 0 plenty and like, I don't care because I also win plenty. So
yeah, what cash games do you play in?
I love Monmouth. I've been in the BCBC virtually every year, even though I haven't had much success in it. And those are really the main ones. I've played in the Keeneland. I've played in the Pegasus. I played in the Pegasus this year. Have you had
any close calls in the BCBC?
BCBC, I've had a couple of close calls. I mean, what year was it? I guess it was relatively recently. Actually, no, it wasn't that recent. When the year that Ohm lost and the year that Arrogate beat Gunrunner, I had 23. I made a big bet on Ohm and lost by a nose. So I had about $6,500 going into the penultimate race. I really liked Tourist. And I didn't have the chutzpah to put $6,500 on him at 14-1. So I think I bet 1,500. I got myself to 23,000. And then the math started because I loved Arrogate. Didn't want to risk betting an exacta, even though we know how it turned out.
California Chrome comes second.
California Chrome coming into second. And I just said, I was paying like, I don't know, 5-1. So I said, Arrogate's 2-1. I like 2-1 better than betting the exacta. But if I bet $23,000 to win at 2-1, I'm going to end up with what, 64,000 bucks. It's not going to be enough to get myself into the prize money and make it more than a 2-1.
And also, Vic Stauffer was in first at the time, I do remember, and he was alive for $1 million bonus. And so all he had to do was win, a little bit, and he would have been, a million plus, almost $2 million score. So let me ask you, what, you seem like you're a pretty big cash player. Do you bet outside the tournaments too, or do you focus just on the tournaments?
I do, and I try to focus on pick fives and the occasional pick six. I don't like the 20-cent ones, but
you play all tracks too.
I play. I actually, even though it's my home track, I try to avoid Aqueduct. I don't do that well. I usually don't do well at Gulfstream, and I avoid it. Recently, I've started playing more Turfway and Oaklawn because the payouts have been massive, and some of the races make no sense. And like my strategy is, can I find one race that might make sense, or two races, and go really tight and then go really deep? And I know people say, oh, it's so stupid to use all in a race. But at a couple of those tracks, like that's how you get the $100,000 payouts. Now, I haven't had that, but I hit a nice $30,000 pick five earlier in the meet, stuff like that. So that's the way I like to play. I don't like to put it, even if my pick five ticket looks expensive, it's $320, it doesn't add up as much as, betting 9 races from 5 tracks and falling in love with a horse every race and, and getting cold, right? That's how people blow up. It's tough to beat the takeout. And I know just myself, even though I think I'm a good handicapper and, I could beat it, that's when I blow up, when I bet every race. So I try to focus, find a couple of targets. And if I'm at the track, and I see something that I like and the odds make sense, similar to one of these live tournaments, I'll definitely take a shot, or I'll bet a double into the next race with some logicals. Same thing if I have any information on a horse, or if I like something and I've been waiting for it to run, something on my stable watch, I'll do the same thing. I'll either play a pick five into it or doubles into it, just some way to leverage that opinion in multiple exotics.
Fair. Seth, how did you get into this great game? What drew you in, and what are your aspirations in it?
Well, I'm 53. In 1986, I went to Roosevelt Raceway in Long Island for the first time with 3 of my friends. Instead of playing basketball at the Rec on Friday nights, we'd occasionally go to Roosevelt with our paper route money or pizza money, and we'd go to Nathan's and play video games if we won. We'd play the $3 big triple, and I just watching Bullet Bob May. Fields are in the hands of the starter. This field is in motion. So that's what got me started. And my buddy Doug Miller, who actually wrote for the Racing Times when it started, they introduced the buyer figures, and ultimately for the Racing Form in Phoenix. His father, Red Miller, brought me to Belmont when we were 17. And it was like right out of a Damon Runyon book. It was like Frenchie, Big Mikey, Little Mikey, Red, and these guys would talk about the pick six. One guy would only play pick sixes. One guy would only play place bets. Everyone had a story. They were all fucking broke, and we loved it. So we ate it up. When I went to, so I always loved racing. When I went to college in Cornell, I, drove down to Binghamton for some reason to try to lose money on Easy Goer against Sunday Silence in the Derby. And I still remember like the 1991 Nassau County Handicap with Farm Away and Jolie's Halo going 46 and Festine winning from like 50 lengths out of it, and Jolie's Halo, sadly bleeding from the nose. So I've been around. I've missed the pick six multiple times. I was the only live ticket to Evening Jewel in the pick six when Blind Luck ran her down 3 lengths in the final 8 at 3-5. So I've had my share of bad beats. I hit 5 of 6 the years in and out. I won the Breeders' Cup. So
how do you have the mind for this?
I was a market maker in equity options. I was a CPA coming out of college. So I think I'm always into the math aspect, the puzzle aspect, the relative value aspect. Started getting more into the animals themselves. I met a guy when I was out in San Francisco. I met a trainer, Steve Miotti, at Golden Gate. The little guy, Art Lobato, actually used to be the host there. And he said, hey, you got to meet this guy, Steve Miotti. I know you're interested in meeting, going to a barn and learning a little more about the animals. So Steve, said, hey, come down on Saturdays and I'll teach you what's up. And bought a $2,000 horse from the Pleasanton Fair. I took 10%. I moved back to New York because the Pecos kind of dried up and I was taking a different job. And from the Freeport OTB, I watched Wine Spoken Here with Marcia Stewart's and my number 24 Jet Jersey Silks. Tony Kalo went nuts. I was hooked. From there, I bought a filly. I brought her back and bred her in New York. And in 2011, I started Long Leg Stables with Stephen Mack, who's a wealthy guy whose father has had horses in the Derby. We enjoyed some success over the years. We had horses like Stan the Man, Tommy the Torpedo, Monty Man. Recently, I've gone into bloodstock full time, so pinhooked a few horses last year. Really excited. We did well at the April sale. We've got a few more coming up in March. And I purchased a couple of horses in March, and this is like invaluable publicity for the business because it's like, not verification of bloodstock, but for the people that know it, I could, advertise in TDN, I could advertise in DRF, I could advertise on TVG, but there's nothing like Matt Carruthers like showing me jumping on a table and acting like a maniac, even though my main investor told me to wear a collared shirt today.
No, it looks great, man.
So this has just been an awesome experience, and that's how I got into it, and that's how, I don't know if it's looking at thousands of 2-year-olds got me honed up to look at them on Saturday, but
So you use your eyes a lot.
Oh, yeah.
When it comes to picking horses, of course.
Yeah.
How much of that plays a part in your handicapping, or is that really just kind of an extra little added thing?
I mean, I think it really does, but it's different from like a sale. So I'm not looking at like a horse's pure confirmation. I mean, because horses at the track, once they're there, there's going to be horses that are like this, like this, like this. They've handled the training, and their careers may be shorter or longer than others, but they're there. So then it's a question about how they're looking. It's more about their coat and how they look, and if I know the horse, how they look compared to themselves.
Do you follow them like consistently? Meaning
sometimes.
Okay, sometimes, yeah.
Sometimes, especially the ones that I know well, or like if it's a horse that I purchased, or if I've been in a paddock and I said, this horse just still looks good, but just a little bit of conditioning. I don't know if it's a little bit over the top. Sometimes I'm right, sometimes I'm wrong. When you're watching on a screen from 20 yards away at the NHC, it's not a perfect science. It's more just like, how's the horse acting? Does it look like a happy horse? Is it rank in the post? If it's rank in the post parade or running off, I don't want anything to do with it. Looks like it's having a good day. It's an animal, right? They're all fast. They're a difference of a second is 5 lengths, as you know. So a good day versus a bad day, and 15 non-winners at 2 at Laurel or one of these races in the winter makes the difference. It's a different story maybe with the top stakes horses that are all doing well. So it's really just a question who's doing well on that day, and they're going to take turns beating each other up.
So not that you want to give away any secrets or anything, but what would you tell people about, from a betting standpoint, in the mythical tournaments versus cash tournaments? I don't know, just any kind of tips or things not to do.
I mean, and I guess in a live money, I really don't know. On some of the ones online, I think it's harder because you're trying to look at what you like, but you're also trying to fight what people behind you are doing, and especially online when it's very, very small money, people are just going to bomb away late in the tournament. On the pick and praise, I'd say pick the horses you like. If it's an NHC type thing, don't pick favorites. You're synthetically shorting the favorite. If the favorite wins, you win. So don't double up. You're killing yourself.
So do you usually play a lot of price horses like above 5-1, 10-1? Do you have or is it just literally case by case, race by race?
It's race by race, because if I see like a completely dominating horse that's going to have the lead, and I think the horse is like 3-1 or 5-2, okay. In the NHC, not normally, but if it's one, or if it's an early bird, for example, early birds, I want to pick the winner. If it's the late NHC, I know I'm not going to beat hundreds and hundreds of people on a Friday. It's more similar to this, where I'm going to have to use some numbers, and I'm going to have to zig where people zag, because it's one thing to listen to all these great players tell you what to do, but if you do the same thing as them, you're just doing the same thing as them, right? So for me, I listen to everybody. I respect everybody. You see the same names on the handicapping leaderboard. So
what do you use usually when you bet?
In terms of data source?
Yeah, just anything.
I mean, I've got DRF, and I like to run my formulator with incremental fractions by horse. So sometimes I'll identify a horse that's not usually on the lead running against 3 speed horses, but I say this horse is faster than everybody. I think I identified one horse in this contest the other day where horse ran like a 21-3 second quarter, on the dirt or something, and I was like, that is just not. It was actually the. It was actually the Tyler Gaffleone horse yesterday, one of the early mandatories on Saturday for Safi Joseph. I think the horse had middle moved into one of those mile races. In a Gulfstream, that middle fraction's always looks fast. It's always 22-3, but this one was 21-3. So I'm like, that one, he just moved at the wrong time. And if he could get a good position and kind of use that same kick later, and that's exactly what he did, and he got up and barely won.
What results?
I think he was 9-1.
Oh, nice. There you go.
So normally, same thing. I'm not a big, trainer player or stuff like that. But once again, if there's a 9-1 with a logical, good jockey that makes sense, I don't need to find a 9-1 with a 1% jockey that, like, I'm going to say this horse was best, and I'll go to my grave saying the horse is best, but the jock looks like he or she is going to fall off from the start. I've had too many of those where that's the case.
Cool, man. Well, I like you got a big check here. You got a good shirt. What anything else you're gonna do differently now that you've had the score? I know you're gonna be working on your bloodstock stuff.
It's like the free publicity was great. I've already had 1 million people texting me. There's a guy sitting at my table that races horses at Golden Gate and Emerald, and he's retired in Phoenix, and he's like, he grabbed me right as you were grabbing me, and he's like, listen, I got to head out, but we're gonna do some horses on the East Coast. So I mean, like, I'm just so excited because I really took a plunge by going into bloodstock, and people are like, are you sure you don't want to be interviewing for CFO jobs, or you really don't want to be a trader? And I'm like, no, I don't. I mean, and my kids are still in high school, so it's not like I'm ready to retire. No, so the 800 would have been nice, but the 250 is great. Fucking awesome. It's money. It's money to really get the business going. I already have this good client. I'm getting ready to work on the website. I already have a bunch of talks going, and I'm just excited for that. And I love racing, and I want to get more foals and more people invested in racing. And I think there need to be changes overall to not only the handicapping piece of it, but racing itself.
When you say handicapping piece, what do you mean?
Well, just people complain about the betting, or people complain about the large shops and the takeouts, and there are challenges. I'd say the non-even playing field. I know Heiss is trying to combat that. But just in terms of racing itself, I think that, it has an image problem. And I think that if you really shine the light on the actual care that goes into these animals every day, the PETA people would think something different, right? So here's a silly example. At the Belmont Stakes, we had a filly running that day, and she was a little bit of a head case filly. We had her in an outside stall because she didn't like being inside. So the PETA people, they're entitled to their opinion, but they're 50 yards from her, screaming and just chanting, and she's getting all agitated and freaked out. So, they had good intentions. How about going to the Uber lot type thing? So I just think if they saw the bills and the people in Ocala that are taking care of these weanlings and yearlings and loving them every day, that they wouldn't think of it as like a vicious sport where they're just trying to kill the animals and it's just all about profit. And I think you need more investment in the industry, and you need more transparency to get that. Like the way that people buy horses needs to change. I think there's an online market, there's this Bitcoin market. People invest in nothing, right? They'll invest in NFTs. How do we not have coins? How do we not have something that's going to take that money and give liquidity? How can we not IPO 20% of the top 10% of horses, or something where an owner might be able to say, hey, I can have 20 horses because I can sell upside calls, or something. I could do something, like something creative.
We're starting to do some of that, like with some of the Derby horses. I know that. But yeah, no, that's those are some good points. What yeah, any other I don't know, epiphanies when you go through an experience like this where you're just like, I know obviously the gratitude is sitting with you, but all the hard work you put in, you've had some close calls, you said, in some of these other tournaments, and it was obviously a brilliant day. But yeah, any other insights? I mean,
it's some vindication. It's funny because you finished second, and it's like, yeah, but this is different than finishing second in a pick six where you get 5 or 6, right? This is like, I got past late. Like I said, I left it all out there. I did what I wanted to do. I'm super happy. I got caught. I'm a horse that ran his race and got caught by somebody else that ran a little better. I do nothing differently. I'm super excited for next year. I'm excited to talk to more people such as yourself about like the Breeders' Cup and some of the live money tournaments where I've made errors. And I actually am excited to go back and review some of those wagers, which I haven't done. I've talked to people here that have gone back and said, really studied. And I think that's kind of my next step to learn a little bit. Because, look, I'm going to pick the horses I like. I'm not going to ask someone else who they like. I mean, I will, like, just as a goof, but, like, I don't care. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm confident in the horses I pick. But I know I have a lot to learn, or I've seen people execute plans better, and so I'd like to achieve, get to that level.
Yeah, I think the cash games require a series of betting that is a ratio, right, of an opinion. You might say one horse is 1 unit, 2 unit, 3 units better than the other. And in the mythical tournaments, everything's treated the same.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where you really got to decide where to go all in. But maybe one of these days soon, we'll have to be competing in some big cash. And I'm more than happy to sit with you. You're a lot of fun. But thanks for the chat, Seth. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Christian.